Welcome in, everybody, to the best in paranormal podcasting. This is Darkness Radio on a Thursday. Well, if you remember right, yesterday when Beer City Bruiser was here, we were doing supernatural news. I told you guys that I may throw you a curveball today. I'm throwing you a curveball today. John Hughes, who was supposed to join us for the healing practices of the Knights Templar and Hospitalier, we had a little difficult time with him. We'll just put it that way, and we'll part as friends. Things didn't quite work out. It sometimes don't work out in life, but it didn't work out, so we didn't get a chance to visit with him. Instead, we got you one better. That's what we did today. And we're going to have an exciting time today, actually talking about reincarnation and some other topics. Today, also some past life regression training. So we're going to do that as well. Dave, let's introduce our guest, shall we? I'm going to reverse course on this and introduce our guests, if I can get my lips to wrap around my teeth here. Our guests today are Dr. David Bettenhausen and Carla Bogni-Kidd. And to tell you a little bit about them, Dave and Carla have been close friends since 1998. Feeling a deeper spiritual kinship for each other, Dave and Carla have spontaneous memories of 29 past lives together while meditating. Now, that's quite a bit of time spent together. They went on to get past life regression training with Dr. Brian Weiss. Now, Dave and Carla spread the message of love and kindness and teach holistic approaches to healing. They teach meditation at their local university and senior centers. Dr. Dave was a registered nurse for 10 years before returning to medical school. He recently retired from his private practice. Dr. Dave now serves as the vice president of medical affairs at a small Midwestern hospital. Carla recently retired as well as his office manager. They now share their message together. The gift of past lives and love is the answer. Let's welcome into Darkness Radio, Dr. David Bettenhausen and Carla Bogni-Kidd. How you doing, folks?
Good.
We're doing great, Tim. It's a pleasure to meet you.
Pleasure to meet you as well. And, well, let's, I guess, dive into the deep end of the pool, shall we? You've actually written 2 books together, correct?
We've actually now written 4.
4? Well, I'm behind. Look at me. So your first book is actually called The Gift of Past Lives with Mother Isabella, God, and Elizabeth, right?
Yes.
Correct.
Okay. Well, I guess that's a good place to start. But I really want to start really with your origin stories, if for lack of a better term, and how we get into the actual past life and past lives and how the two of you discovered that you knew each other, not just in one life, because it's amazing when you find out you knew somebody in a past life, but to find out that you had multiple past lives together. And I guess we'll start with you, Dr. Dave. How is it that you found out you had past lives, and how is it that you found out that you had past lives with Carla?
All right. So that's a great story, great place to start. This all started for us in the office, my medical practice. We started electronic medical records some 7-8 years ago. And for your listeners, electronic medical records were not fun for doctors to start with. It got better over time, but that first 3 to 6 months nearly killed us. I was showing up at the office at 5 a.m, opening charts, still there, sometimes at 7 or 8 o'clock at night, because you either had to see a lot less patients or work a lot of longer hours to try to make it work. And I've always been sort of easygoing, but it became to the point where I was tired, burned out, hated the computer,
crabby.
Yes. Carla said I was impossible to deal with. And she came up and sort of had a conversation with me.
Well, I was Dave's office manager, and I was reading in AARP magazine about the benefits of meditation. And I thought, well, certainly that would help. So I said to Dave one day, either I'm calling a counselor because you're, not approachable, you're crabby, you don't have any time for the patients, or what do you think about meditating as an office? We had a small office. And of course, Dave said, all right, I'll try meditation. He didn't want anybody messing with his head, apparently.
No.
But so the two other girls in the office decided that they would meditate with us before the patients began. So the first day we all meditated and we talked about how difficult it was to shut our minds off and, to just be, not looking at our phone, not playing on a computer, all of the above. The second day, we all said that we felt really relaxed and we all saw colors, different colors. And it was a nice, warm, fuzzy experience. The third day, the girls said, we don't want to come in early. We'll do it at home. So it was just Dave and I, and we meditated for about half an hour. And then we heard the patients coming in. So we got up, went into our adjoining offices, and Dave came up behind me and he said, Carla, I know you're going to think I'm crazy, but I think I was talking to your mother. Now, my mother had died 18 years before. He had never met her. And I said, you got my attention. And of course, I have always been very open-minded. I've been to psychics, mediums, whatever. And I said, what do you mean you were talking to my mother? Why didn't you come to me? Mm-hmm. And so he said, well, I thought she looked like you from side view. I'm pretty sure it was your mother. And of course, my sister worked in the office too at the same time. And she went in the back and she brought up a picture of my mother. And she showed it to Dave, and Dave got real emotional. And he said, that's who I was talking to. And he said, go ahead.
I said, your mother was like laughing, jovial, happy, smiling. And she kept going like this and shaking a shoe and kept showing me this shoe. And I'm like, the shoe. And I said, so I don't know what this is about. And Carla went to her computer, brought up some sort of...
I Googled ballroom dancing shoes, and 60 or 70 pair appeared on the screen. And I said to Dave, which one? And he walked over and he pointed to the exact shoe that my mother had worn her entire life for ballroom dancing, for dress up or for church. Now, how do you get that right? So he had our attention right then and there.
Okay.
So we just wanted to keep meditating to see what else would happen.
And so every day we kept going in, and it was really surprising because just turning off all the computers, sitting there for 30 minutes, I became happier almost immediately.
And tell them about all the benefits we found.
And we found lots of benefits. And so that's one of the reasons we started teaching meditation. Of course, the physician in me wanted to know, why did I feel so good and what was going on? So, of course, meditation increases serotonin and dopamine, which are both neuroreceptors, but they actually decrease depression. Mm-hmm. And that's what we give people who are depressed.
Right.
It also lowers cortisol, which is that stress hormone that makes people gain weight. And I like to tell people the first year I started to meditate, I lost 104 pounds.
Wow.
Over about a year. The next thing, it actually lowers your blood pressure, lowers your blood sugar, makes you more active, actually makes you more productive. So you get more done in the same amount of time, because all of those things get regenerated when you meditate. So it actually can lead to healing, less disease, because stress causes disease. So we started teaching it because it was a great way to reach out and help people. The next thing that started to happen while we were meditating is, I started to see things. Strange scenes. We just took notes about them and wrote them down, and we just,
faces and objects that made no sense.
Yeah. And then there was a day when I was meditating and I had a memory of being a little boy. Now, it was in 1962, and in 1962 in this life, I was 3 years old.
Okay.
I lived in Nebraska. That's where I was raised. My father put us in a little blue sedan, packed up the green suitcases, and drove all the way across the country. And he kept telling us we were going to Boston. I remembered married student housing of some kind with brick buildings there. And then I remembered my favorite memory of the summer, which I was running on the beach. And as I was running on the beach in Boston, I looked over and there was a Ferris wheel and roller coasters, and I could see little blue cups with the people's feet hanging out of them. And I was trying to explain this to Carla, what I was seeing. And there was a whole row of souvenir shops. But as I was running, I suddenly heard this little girl yell, "Be quiet, you're bothering my family." She ran over, she pushed me down, she sat on my chest, gave me a kiss on the forehead, and then I heard the voice in the background say, Carla, that's not how little girls act. And I looked up, and this little girl was standing there with her hands on her hips. She had this little blue two-piece ruffled bathing suit. And Carla looked at me.
I said, that was me, Dave. My sister, who was also working in the office, the two of us had chills up our spine. First of all, we said, all these years we've worked with you, you never once mentioned being in Boston. We were from Boston. So I remembered that day. And the reason I did was because my parents were the good Catholic family, always breaking up and getting back together, but never divorced. Mm-hmm. I was the youngest of 6 girls. That particular day, we didn't have a cab. A car. We were not well off. Daddy had rented 2 cabs. We all went down to the beach, Revere Beach, because that had an amusement park with it. As he talked, we knew exactly which one it was. When we got there, I had no bathing suit. So my parents, even though they could not afford it, we all went across the street and they bought me my first brand new 2-piece blue ruffled bathing suit, etched in my mind forever.
And so we were like, wow, because I didn't buy the practice where Carla was the office manager until I was 38 years old.
Okay.
So we met at 3 and then we didn't meet again for 35 years.
Wow.
In Ohio.
So if I may, to kind of follow this story a little bit, what brought Carla to Ohio?
Well, my parents eventually did divorce and she remarried. And of course, he was from out here.
So, she moved to Detroit. Then they moved down into Ohio. I went to residency in Ohio and bought a practice and stayed.
Wow. That's
synchronicities,
always meant to be.
Yeah.
Always meant to be.
That's amazing. Go ahead, Dr. Dave. I'm sorry. I didn't mean to interrupt.
So we are thinking this is truly amazing that through meditation, I've had this memory and I didn't understand it. And we kept just writing things down that we were seeing. And then there became a day when I had another crystal clear memory. And I was standing in an alley and I looked across this dark alley and there was Carla standing there. Now I say Carla, I know it was Carla. It reminded me of Carla. She didn't look like Carla. She was like 21 years old. She had her hair slicked back. She had a little gold band on her head. She had this fringed like skirt. Looked like she was a flapper. I saw 2 bright flashes. I heard bangs. I was hit in the chest with a bullet, thrown back on the ground in the alley, and I knew I was dying and bleeding to death.
Jeez.
I thought, this is so strange. So I'm telling Carla this. The next day, meditating again, I get more of the story, except I get the story before the end. And I'm starting to get this story. And as I'm getting the story, I'm driving to a wedding on January 10th, 1925, for a man named Angelo. And I'm with a friend, and we stop at Ashland Auditorium in Chicago. And we walk up the steps, and there's this makeshift church inside this huge auditorium. And I get ushered in, and I sit down. And as I'm sitting there watching, this little blonde walks up in front. And during the wedding, she's the wedding singer, and she sings the Ave Maria, and it's incredibly beautiful. And I'm so enthralled with her that at the reception, I had to meet her. We go forward a little bit. I meet her at the reception. I ask her to dance. She sort of pushes me away. She dances with me once. I keep pushing. She agrees to meet me for breakfast the next day. So we meet at a restaurant called Marino's in Chicago the next morning. And during that breakfast afterwards, we take a walk along the Chicago coastline. It is cold. There is snow. There is wind. Everything is so clear. She tells me her name is Ruby Donaldson, that she was born in Bullock, Georgia, that her father's name was James, her mother's name was Anna, that she moved to Chicago from Georgia to become a dressmaker and a singer. I'm listening to this, and I'm like, I don't even know where this is coming from. Later, I took her back to her apartment on Loomis Street.
Okay.
I'm telling Carla all this, and Carla is the way she is.
Of course, I wanted some proof. Who wouldn't?
Mm-hmm.
And I thought, well, that life wasn't that long ago. We should be able to find something. So I got onto Ancestry.com, and I did indeed find Ruby Donaldson, born in Bullock, Georgia, 1904, to James and Anna Donaldson, one of 11 children. And then I went even further to find newspaper articles in Chicago of the wedding of Angelo Genna to Lucille Spinola, January the 10th, 1925, at Ashland Auditorium. So we were not crazy. I called Dave. I said, I have corroborating information. You are not hallucinating. This is real.
And so what we found is, of course, not being mobster aficionados or whatever you want to call it. Right before Al Capone, the boss in Little Italy was Angelo Genna.
Wow.
So as it turns out in the story, Ruby worked at DeAndre's, which was a speakeasy that was owned by Angelo Genna, the mobster. And I was speaking with one of his flappers that he owned, and I was not allowed.
And that's why he met his demise in the dark alley.
Wow.
So this starts us on how did Carla and I meet twice in this life, from living so far apart, and meet again in Ohio? How did I have a memory that Carla's there? We're fascinated, and we keep meditating on this, and I keep coming in and trying to tell her more of the story. And there's a day that I'm sitting there, I'm telling Carla the story, and it feels like everything changes. As I'm telling Carla the story, I start speaking as if I'm actually J.J. Wright, the man from 1925.
Mm-hmm.
And as I'm speaking, Carla starts to answer just as Ruby did in 1925. And we have a shared memory of 1925 together.
It was very freaky.
So, Carla, at this point, let me ask you. So, as he's talking to you as J.J. Wright, what goes off in your head? What do you start to remember about this life?
Well, first of all, I started to answer all these questions. I started to ask him ahead of time, was it this? Was it that? Is this happening? Is that happening? And he's like, yes, 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 yes. And then all of a sudden, we both felt that immense passion that Ruby and JJ had, and we both got embarrassed. We shut down and ran to two different directions. We were married to other people. These were not the normal feelings that we had.
Yes.
And later in the day, Dave said to me, Carla, I'm not a dumb man. I know what you're doing. And I'm like, well, I'm so embarrassed. You know, that was so strange. We just didn't know what was happening.
Because there was actual emotional things attached to the memories.
Yeah.
But we started looking for everything we could find. Carla had read a book or two.
I had read a lot of Dr. Brian Weiss's books, and Dr. Brian Weiss was a well-known psychiatrist who had accidentally hypnotized somebody back to a past life. Mm-hmm. Now, he was a non-believer. He had no idea that this was even possible, but he actually is very well known in the field now, for those of you who have read his books. And so when this happened, it didn't seem impossible to me because I had read his books and I knew that reincarnation was real. To me, I believed it. Dave, you know, both of us being raised Catholic, Dave didn't even know if it was possible.
I didn't think anything was possible that way. And I started doing research. We read the research done at the University of Virginia Department of Perceptual Studies, where they interviewed about 2,500 kids who have verified past life memories. They like to do kids because you can't really coach or teach a kid to lie. And so they find these kids and then they go back and there's the famous story of James Langinger, who was a fighter pilot, and those kind of people that they've discovered.
Yep.
And then, of course, for me, the science part of it had to be something there. So I started to look at what past life regression hypnosis was and what meditation was. And some of the people that also had spontaneous memories had them at the time between when they were waking and falling asleep. And so I looked at those, and we found that in every one of those states, there's an increase in alpha and theta waves in the brain. And in all of those states, when alpha and theta waves go up, there's an increase in memory. And then when you look at the research, and if you get into doing this, it's almost always traumatic memories that people bring up first. So the memory of being shot in an alley was pretty traumatic. So that's the one I found first.
Sure.
And so I'm looking at this, and it starts to make some sort of sense, except for where does religion, and I was raised Catholic, and where does all this fit in all of this? And then meditating one day, I met another woman, and her name was Isabella. And Isabella said, Dave, I've been with you for 6,000 years, since your first incarnation. I was like, okay. Way back, she said we should try meditation. Maybe I should have tried a counselor. Not only have I've got someone who tells me they're a spirit guide, who's telling me that angels and spirit guides exist, and that there's a world that's spiritual, that exists somewhere outside of me, and it doesn't quite match the heaven and hell story of religion. So we started doing more research on religion and reincarnation, and we kept meditating, and we kept a journal that by the time we were done, the things that Isabella had told us, the things that we spontaneously knew, we found out I had 42 past lives and Carla had 34, and that we had 29 of them together. Wow. Not always as love interests. She'd been my sister, my mother, my wife, my girlfriend, the girl next door, something. And my queen one time. So, I mean, it was like all of these roles, even though there was quite a few of them that were significantly involved with each other. Mm-hmm. But we're looking at this, and we have
journals,
and we're going, what should we do? How do we tell anybody what is this?
And of course, we now know that we reincarnate with soul families. And our soul families, we come back together for two reasons, either to help each other or to teach, to try our patience, because we have to learn. And as Isabella was explaining that to Dave, and we were journaling all of that, she said that everybody knows what the 10 Commandments are, but she said, I'll give you the shortened version and the version that everybody can remember. If you can live a life that is without conceit, jealousy, selfishness, and unforgiveness, and do everything out of compassion and love, you'll get off the karmic wheel. You won't have lessons to learn. And it's pretty simple, really. Anything that you do that you feel is negative falls under one of those categories. And what you do positive falls under compassion or love. So with every choice you make, with every decision you make, you really should ask yourself, self-evaluate, say, boy, am I doing that out of jealousy or conceit? Because it stops you dead in your tracks.
And so we kept writing things down. Isabella was helping us. We would get done with a portion of a life, and Isabella would try to explain what we did wrong in that life and why we really, really needed to return, and what the karmic lesson was.
Okay, can I stop you for a second here? Because
sure.
You're getting more from Isabella than I think most people who go through past life regressions even get. They say, I think I was this in this life, but I don't understand why I was even there, or I don't even get why I was there. Or, it seems like a lot of things are not answered for people. They find out I was this in this life, but I don't know why. Or they find out they had, I know of 3 past lives I had, but I don't know why I had them. The puzzle remains scattered, and they don't find out why it is they lived these lives. Why is it that Isabella came forward to you, Dr. Dave, and fleshed all this out with you?
Well, Isabella said that Carla and I were that if you want, we usually tell people that we don't really pray to ask for things.
Mm-hmm.
We only pray to be thankful. At that particular time, I was stressed and burned out to such a point, and Carla was going through some issues in her life. And the two of us were so focused on making sure the other one was okay,
Mm-hmm.
that she said, literally, the compassion that you had for each other, you weren't asking anything for yourself. You were asking for only someone else.
We were ready.
So we were ready to hear the message. She says it's somewhat, I don't like the term, and I don't know, but she says it's, you had a mystical experience that few have.
Wow. Well, I guess. I guess. I mean, there's so much there. I have to go back to something in this dynamic between the two of you. And that is, you mentioned, Dr. Dave, that at one point, Carla was not just your friend or your lover, but it was also at one time your mother, your sister, your queen. There's so many different dynamics there. So I'm just going to throw it out there. Obviously, there's different types of love there. And I'll
Correct.
have both of you answer this question. And I'll start with you, Dr. Dave, and then I'll go to Carla. And that's this. So you're in this life. How do you balance what exactly you are to one another? And do you deal with it in the present tense, in the present life? Or do you weigh everything that was and give that merit and go forward from there?
First, can I just say
Sure.
that Isabella has told us that our personalities are very similar in every life. Who we are is who we are.
Okay.
It's the choices we make that make us different.
Okay.
So it's easy for us to get along in each and every life because we are who we are.
Yeah. And so I think, Tim, to answer your question, how do you balance the differences? Part of that is why most people have the fail they talk about. You kind of lose part of that memory when you come in, because there are the normal rules of the world that imply here. But you're absolutely correct. Love is love, and love is not a selfish or a jealous or a conceited anything. And literally, I love to use this from the very first life. Our names were David and Ariella. And it was in Jerusalem 6,000 years ago, in an area somewhere close to the Mount of Olives. And I didn't know anything, but I went back and researched, and there was indeed a settlement there at one time about 7,000 to 6,000 years ago, which I thought was interesting to find.
Yeah.
But we went, and during that, the word ahav and ahava kept coming up. And we had to look it up because we didn't know what that meant. And in Old Hebrew, it meant to love, and to love without expectations, to literally give with no expectation of having it come back. So if you look at spouse relationships, mother, father, mother to child, or child to mother, that relationship is really about giving, not about, can we both give 50%, which is what most of us argue. It's just about giving without any expectations. And if you give without expectations, you find out both of you give more than 50%. You might both be giving 100%, and then the relationship works however the relationship is. So if the relationship is this passionate love relationship, it works because you care about your partner and their satisfaction and health and happiness and joy. If it's as a parent, you love without regard. Everybody hears the story about the mother who's poor, who makes sure their son has a meal that night but skips the potato.
I think that Isn't that just what you said there? That parable, isn't that really the basis of a good relationship, no matter what, no matter whether it be mother child or husband wife or vice versa? I mean, isn't that the basis of a good relationship? Is really, when it comes down to it, in times of need, is self-sacrifice.
Absolutely.
Correct.
Yeah.
Correct. Now that brings up something really interesting, Tim, and I'm just gonna say this. This has to do with communication.
Mm-hmm.
Somewhere between 6,000 and 10,000 years ago, human communication changed, and when it changed, it started to add words to our language that meant promise. That means giving up something today for tomorrow. And if we talk about how that affects the world now, the same word that applies is the word covenant. So it's not strange that there's a story of a covenant that shows up in the Bible. Now, we don't believe a lot of what's in the Bible because
it's written by man.
It's written by man.
Mm-hmm.
But it's interesting that the language changes about 6,000 years ago that allows someone to actually give up today for something tomorrow, or give up today for someone else. That part of the language starts to be introduced, and that occurs at about the time we have our first life. And then we started doing lots of research again, and so I'm going to tell you that, because we talked about synchronicity.
Yeah.
We found out that our names were David and Ariel, and David is in the Bible numerous times, and that's a name in Hebrew. When you spell Ariella or you spell Carla in Hebrew, it's the same name.
Wow.
Those kind of things started to get us. And we found that Carla's had a name sort of like Carla a few times. I've had Dave a few times. She's been Suzanne a few times.
I've been Cara, Carlise,
yeah,
Carlotta, over and over.
And so it's interesting that those names follow us. And even our children in some life, sometimes that name reoccurs in another life. And it keeps following us.
But the important thing to remember about reincarnation is, in our first book, there's 20 of our stories. And then at the end of each story, we do give the reason why we return, what we did that was negative rather than positive. And the stories are fun, and knowing about your past lives are fun. But what we need to remember is we're here for a reason. We're not just flitting through life having fun. I mean, even though we are, we're here because we have to learn all sides of all stories. Some people say they've been, they know that it's a female and they were a male before. That's all part of the lesson. Dave and I have not been. I've always been a female. He's always been a male. But if you cannot learn your lesson as a female, then you will come back as a male, so that it makes it easier for you to figure something out. And with these lives that we've found out, we have learned that you have to live on all sides of all stories.
Yeah, and it's really interesting because we have all these lives mapped out. We actually have a period of time where we're Viking, landing on Scottish soil and invading. Then we join the Scottish. In the next life, we're English fighting the Scottish. In the next life, we were Scottish fighting the English. In the next life, Carla is Danish and Viking descent and marries into the English throne.
Jeez.
Living on both sides, sometimes of the same war.
But how else can you learn? How else do you learn? We only learn through adversity.
Yeah.
That's just the way it is.
And you find out that in war, first of all, there really is no winner.
No.
And that, if you're on this side of the war and you come back and you're on the other side of the war the next time, you're killing your descendants because war makes no sense. And then we started to look and we found other lives that were interesting, because we found, I think 14 for me where I was black.
16 for you, 14 for me,
yep.
where we're black.
But of course, we've also been white. We've also been
Spanish.
Oriental, Spanish, so Hispanic, or however you'd like to call that.
Mm-hmm.
So different nationalities. We've been Catholic, Protestant, we've been pagan and Jewish, Druid in different lives. We were Mayan, who honored the sun god, because there's something greater than us, but we haven't figured it out completely.
I think that's a good point to take our break. When we come back, okay, so we've gotten the lives down, we've gotten the lessons down. Don't answer this yet, but when we come back, I want to find out why we can't retain the lessons when we come back into this world, so that we can look back and go, you know what? I know where I screwed up. Now I'm going to resolve it in this life. I'm going to ask you that question when we come back.
All right.
It's a fascinating conversation so far, folks. Dr. David Bettenhausen, Carla Bogni-Kidd are our guests. When we come back, we'll talk more about this fascinating subject. Their website is thegiftofpastlives.com. We've got a link to that on our description of our program here, to that website, and much, much more, in ways that you can get a hold of both of them and take a look at all four of their books, actually, and purchase those books here through this program and get a look at their entire scope of their past lives here. But we come back more with Dr. Dave and Carla, and we're going to talk about why we can't retain the memory of these past lives, and why, and maybe we'll talk a little bit about actually getting into a meditative state, and how we so easily can slip into a meditative state, because some of us can't do that. So we'll talk to Dr. Dave and Carla a little bit about that as well. You're listening to the best in paranormal podcasting. This is Darkness Radio. Welcome back to the best in paranormal podcasting. This is Darkness Radio. I'm Tim Dennis. Boy, have we got an interesting show going on here this morning, afternoon, evening, whenever we're listening to this podcast here. Dr. David Bettenhausen and Carla Bogni-Kidd are our guests, and we're talking about past lives, past life regression, reincarnation, and one of the things, Dr. Dave and Carla, that have always frustrated me about the concept of, I shouldn't say concept because it's a very real thing, but I haven't yet to fully understand the reason why when we come back, we don't retain the lesson of either just the past life you've lived or the culmination of past lives we've lived. Why is it that we don't retain the lesson, or at least it's not lingering in the head where we can call it forward quickly so that we can get to the business of having to learn what we have to learn in this life?
So, Tim, again, we mentioned earlier that children sometimes have these spontaneous memories, and we really think that children probably have many more than they really share with us.
Okay.
And so if this kind of makes sense, certainly it does for me as I'm in my 60s now, is that there's only so much I'm able to retain now. I forget more than I used to.
Same here, yeah.
And what's happened is we've seen more and more of these past lives, while we're writing them and while we're living them and experiencing them, they seem ever so real. But you already have every moment of this life memorized and cataloged, and you don't remember all of it.
True.
I forget things all the time.
Yeah, I don't remember half my life here, to be honest with you. Yeah.
So kids can start to remember some to start with, but then it starts to disappear. And most of these memories start to go into your subconscious. Now, if you start looking at some other neuromedical theories related to this, there's a theory called modular theory of how we record everything in the subconscious as either a positive or a negative event. And it stays there unless it needs to tell us that it's there. And here's an example. When you first touch something that's hot, you pull back.
Mm-hmm.
The second time you touch something hot, you pull back faster because you remember it. Somewhere in your subconscious, even if you don't remember the first time you touched it being hot. Everything gets shared in your subconscious that way. And if your subconscious follows your consciousness from life to life in reincarnation, then every positive and negative event you've had in the past is also there. It might be what some people call intuition or deja vu. They see something and boom, oh, I've been here before, but they've never been there, they think.
Okay.
Or it's that feeling of the hair goes up on the back of your neck if you're walking down a dark alley. Because if it was me from a past life in Chicago, I was once killed in a back alley. And if I feel someone, I feel it. Some part of that memory comes back.
And practically, if you were a victim of Jeffrey Dahmer and you're reincarnated, do you really want to remember those things?
Yeah, no, Carla. I mean,
yeah,
because there's a part of me that if I remember something that traumatic, I'm going to know to stay away from it. I mean, you know, or know for the next time if there's something that dangerous that tries to approach me in that way again.
Well, you do know, and you have little hints into why you're back again in your astrological sign. In your astrological sign, you have an angel associated with it. Now, the angels are just like we talked about the 5 simple rules.
Okay.
To live a life without conceit, jealousy, selfishness, and unforgiveness. There is an angel for each one of those negative actions. And the astrology signs are broken into 4 threes. So, for instance, at the beginning, you've got Aquarius, Pisces, Aries. They all fall under the angel of Mariel's Legion, which is the yellow angel. In our third, of selfishness.
Okay.
So in our third book, it's called the manual, just for that reason. I mean, because I like to say we never got the manual.
Yep.
This is the manual. It explains how were we created, and it breaks down, there's a color chart in there, breaks down our astrological signs, what our tendency or negative tendency was in a past life. In this life, we were given an angel to help us overcome it. It doesn't mean we're doing it right now. For instance, Dave and I both fall under the Legion of Mariel, which is selfishness. Now, when I first heard that, I thought, oh, I'm not selfish. That's horrible. But selfish can be with your time, not necessarily with your cookies.
Okay.
You know?
And also, since it's related to the past life, I want you to go back to Ruby and JJ. And I don't want to tell everybody what happens. We know JJ dies, but Ruby's life continues, and there's things that happen with her. That
full story is in The Gift of Past Lives. It's woven all through, and then you find out what happens.
But when we were asking, so where does the selfishness come from? Isabella said, you continued, Dave, and so did Carla, to see each other in the midst of something because it was what you guys wanted. It was a selfish tendency for you guys to say this, because Carla actually said, you know, you should go away because the mob is going to come for you. But I kept showing up and showing up. And she let me show up. That's because we actually took our feelings into account and no one else that might be influenced by a negative thing that would occur.
And a lot of other people suffered the outcome.
Yeah, so we made selfish decisions for us because we kept trying to get together even though it wasn't the right choice.
So was the question ever asked, what if? What if you had stayed away? What was the purpose of the two of you meeting in that life?
Well,
see if we would overcome.
And also the other part of that is
we don't always come for ourselves.
We don't always come for ourselves. There's other people that we've affected in that life that would have learned something. And Isabella says, there was some fear, and you can't truly love and fear at the same time. There was fear. Ruby didn't want to take off.
Mm-hmm.
JJ didn't want to stop her having her life that was exciting and etc. So he kept putting himself into danger. She kept putting herself into danger because they were involved. They could have literally left the life, made a choice to be different.
Run away.
Yeah.
And then they would have had a whole different outcome. On lessons we don't know, but because we didn't make the choice. We made a choice that was selfish to try to live this exciting life in the middle of something that was dangerous.
And here's an example. The life after that was just our past life. We were brother and sister. Our name was Katie and Johnny. We were from Chicago once again. Mm-hmm. And on New Year's Eve in 1944,
yep,
our father was a fighter pilot.
Christmas Eve,
our father was a fighter pilot, and he was overseas. And our mother was downstairs wrapping Christmas presents. We were upstairs playing on our 3-story staircase. And we fell to our deaths, and we both broke our necks.
Oh.
I was 6, and Johnny, Dave, was 4. And so we asked Isabella, well, what kind of lesson is that? We were little kids. What could we possibly have done? And she explained, you didn't do anything. You were there to serve a lesson because our father, his name was Jackson, our father was killing not just soldiers that were enemies. He was killing children and families, bombing them all. He needed to see what it felt like to lose a family. So when he came home from war, his entire family, his 2 children, were gone. But when he did get out, they had one more child, and they named her Carla.
Oh, okay.
Mm-hmm. Synchronicities.
Yeah. Wow. What a harsh lesson, though. I mean...
Well, we're invincible, though, when you think about it. We're invincible. We are infinite souls. Nothing can be done to us.
Yeah, it's how we react. So people think that this early death of a child, well, the child didn't really learn a test or have to be tested or learn anything. And it always gets down to this, and it's the same story that some of the atheists come in when you start to talk about God. They say, God kills babies. Okay. Was there a lesson? The baby doesn't die because the baby comes back in another life. It's not an end. There's no end. The end is when you get off of this karmic wheel, and then there's no wants or needs, and you're off of the stress that we have. But adversity is necessary. And people say, well, what's even the purpose of life at all? If you've talked to people who have had near-death experiences, people who have had spontaneous memories, some people who have mediumship experiences, they're all talking about when they were in this unseen realm, the supernatural, the heaven, or whatever you'd like to call it. Mm-hmm. They were not really communicating with words and touch. It's always a telepathic experience filled with love. And so the reason we have actually a physical life is for experience and shared experience, for communication. We know what red is. We know what roses are. We know what sunshine and warmth and beauty and love is.
And a dog.
And what a dog is, yes. And so when you're in the non-physical experience and everything is telepathic and you're sharing what really is a thought. How do you share a thought when you have no experience? Because that's how communication is developed. So we need life after life to develop communication skills with each other so that we have shared memories. So that when we are all non-physical and spiritual, that we communicate because we have shared things that we've been through. So I can say, do you remember what a rose looks like? Do you remember what it's like to hold your best friend? I feel that I would love to hold you like I held my best friend.
What it's like to eat chocolate.
Yeah. Joy.
Mm-hmm.
So you said a key phrase here, Dr. Dave, and I want to expound on this a little bit, and that is getting off the karmic wheel. That suggests there's an end to the karmic wheel. There suggests there's an end to maybe even the reincarnation, and eventually there's an end to the physical experience. If there's an end to the physical experience, what happens at the end of the physical experience? Do we just end up being a telepathic thought, or do we become guides? Do we become what happens to us?
So crossed a couple little spots there, so I'm going to tell you. Certainly you can communicate with those that have passed over, or those who have passed over try to communicate with you, and they will take on some other roles in that heavenly realm. Your spirit guide is always your spirit guide, but those people can become like secondary guides, and they'll take on roles.
For instance, my sister who died of cancer when she was 40, she is the person in our soul group that passes us over when we die.
Oh. Okay.
Yes. And my mother, you've heard of gatekeepers.
Yes.
My mother, who also was Dave's mother and Dave's sister, she is our gatekeeper. So if somebody that is waiting to reincarnate is trying to contact us, if she thinks it will be a negative experience, she stops it.
Because part of our disposition, personality follows us. And sometimes those people waiting to come back would like to influence the world they're going to return to. So they may reach out. Well, nobody's supposed to predict the future. But if they start to say, this may happen because we see it looks that, well, it may change the way you make a decision. Well, if it changes the way you made a choice, then it is influencing your future. And your choices are supposed to determine your future.
Understandable.
We're responsible for our own actions.
Understandable. So, are you? Maybe I'm not catching this quite right. So, is there a point in my spiritual, let's say, growth where I decide I've had enough, I'm off of this wheel? Or is it determined by the universe?
I'm going to say it's determined by God, Creator, Tao, Source, Brahman.
Okay.
However you would like to determine that all-powerful being that somehow has to coordinate 7 billion lives on the planet.
So it's a long process.
It's a long process.
And
if you look at the history of the world and we project into the future, it appears that our sun will start to expand and contract and expand and contract. So apparently 4.5 million years from now, there may be a point where the earth is no longer inhabitable. So
we'll be out of Dodge by then.
So if there's a greater being, and logically, there has to be one that is the greatest. Yeah. No matter what you think, if that's a part of logic. Something is greater than you, and there has to be the best or the greatest. If that greatest being, God, Source, Tao, the Creator, whatever your term is that makes you the happiest, was able to determine how many times you're going to influence and interact with these many people, starting from the beginning to the end, so that everyone gets to the point where there becomes a point where someone's going to be the last person. And the last person's going to have that lesson. What is it like when you're alone? And that's going to be the lesson they need to return home for the last time.
Is that going to be the least favorite son or daughter?
No.
I don't think it has to be.
None of us are special. We're all special. Even Jeffrey Dahmer has the chance to overcome what he's done and make it, talk about the levels.
And make it, okay, so again, this is in the manual. There's 4 books. The 4 books are The Gift of Past Life with Mother Isabella, God, and Elizabeth. The second one is Hell No, Reincarnation. That book has a lot of research about reincarnation. It has all the religions, 33% of the world really believes in reincarnation. It's a normal tenet of the Jewish faith, it still is. It doesn't happen until Christianity shows up. that it starts to get written out because it's been part of almost every indigenous population and all over the world. Hindus, Buddhists, Druze, Zoroastrians all believed in something that was going to return, and so did Jews. And in fact, in the Catholic Church, Origen is one of the first writers that really was writing the doctrine, Origen for the Catholic Church, and he includes that Jesus must be created. He concluded that your soul exists before you came to this life, and it exists after this life. And he concluded the transmigration of the soul must be necessary because it would not be justice for a loving God to determine that you made one mistake that was too big, that couldn't be in one life, that couldn't be overcome.
Okay.
And then 200 years later, the Catholic Church excommunicated him and burned his books, even though he wrote most of the doctrine, because it did not match the atoning death of Jesus' story.
Yes.
If you get more than one chance, Jesus doesn't have to die.
That's true. Yeah.
Book 3.
Oh, and book 3 is the manual, which we talked a little bit about.
Yep.
And it includes planning your next life, what occurs in between life. It also includes a glimpse at the levels of heaven or the spiritual world, talking about the 7 planes of existence, which includes our earthly plane, which is the lowest. The second plane, which is where we wait to return for reincarnation. Plane 3 is where you actually have a past life review. If you go there in between lives to review what happened in the last life and plan your next life. Plane 4 is for those people who have taken a job for God or who could be asked by God, even though if they're done, to come back and help someone else. Plane 5 is what we call over the horizon or heaven, where those people that get to that level never have to return. There's an actual 6th plane that is soulmates, which is a little different than people like to romanticize it, but it's still that kind of a job. God takes 2 individuals that have been very good at working together, who have all of the male and female qualities combined, because all of us can have feminine sides and masculine sides, and emulate completeness. And they put those 2 together to serve as a beacon of love to try to draw more people home.
I see.
And plane 7 is the eye of God, or the creator source, Tao, the ultimate. And what's going to happen is someday that last soul will return to the spiritual world. Mm-hmm. And when that soul returns, everything collapses back into one with God.
So, and I don't mean to get stuck on this last soul, but I do have to ask the pertinence or prominence of this last soul. Why one left to close up the shop, so to speak? Is it the spiritual strength of that one soul? Is it the fact that that one soul can take the solitary confinement or the moment?
The one soul may even be asked to come back and help, so that the other soul that's there is never alone.
Okay. To me, it just seems like that one solitary person who kind of closes up the shop, for lack of a better term, either has to be incredibly strong or is incredibly damned. You have to look either from the positive or negative side of things. And I'm not being...
But we're never alone. Everybody has a spirit guide.
No,
everybody has an angel.
Right.
And if you meditate, you can hear them whether you think you can or not. A lot of our decisions that we arrive upon are with the aid of our spirit guide. You can hear them in your left ear. Even though you don't know how you arrived at that decision, we have a lot of help and guidance.
Understandable, Carla. I'm just saying that many a good man has been thrown into a prison
And solitaire.
and
Yes.
and solitary, and whether it be one of their own making or one that has been chosen for them and has been driven insane. So, whether that voice is one that you hear of the divine or one that's of your own making can be one that tears you apart very quickly, if you know what I'm saying. So there's, to be left to your own devices and then expected to close up shop, that takes a strong person.
It would. And the other thing we have to say, Tim, because we don't know how this plan would work and how it would all plan out. It may be that the last couple is there and someone is going to take the last breath. It may be so momentary that it doesn't matter.
That's
and
true.
We also need to remember what Isabella tells us over and over and over again. It's not what happens to us in life. It's how we choose to respond to it.
True. Very true. I just, I guess I can almost see it in my mind. That's why I guess I want to flesh it out a little bit, or I feel like I need to talk about it, because there's something about it that just suggests that it's someone who's a little more than just your average layman who's left behind.
Well, it's kind of like that Will Smith movie.
Yeah. Or the old movie, The Omega Man. Somebody's the last man on Earth, and there's only zombies running around.
And
whatever.
It's probably someone of extreme spiritual strength. It's probably not anyone who's just, it's not your average Joe Blow who's out there on the street and just happened to stop into a gas station for a Twinkie and a Coke.
Right. And everybody else is gone and he's getting a Coke.
But remember, guys, we're all just that average Joe Blow, and we're all the king, and we're all spiritually strong. And as we climb up those levels, our vibration goes up. We all have the ability to be that strong person. We all have the ability to be that last person. It's what we choose to do.
Oh, sure. I'm just thinking that person is probably someone who is a little more trained,
Yeah.
Tim, it could be you.
It could be you, because you've heard the story.
Yes.
So, Tim, think about this.
Yeah.
You know how things are electronically now?
Yes. Yeah.
This podcast exists forever.
It does. Yeah. Yeah.
It's forever. It's just like the soul. So that guy may be pulling out the electronic thing of this when he turns around and realizes he's the last one.
Mm-hmm.
And he should have no fear, because the next moment he knows he'll be home with Creator Tao Source, because his time and this is over.
And the rest of us.
There is no more fear.
Mm-hmm. There
There is no more hate. There is no more worry. There is no more need.
That's true. That's very true. You're right on that one. You guys got me on that one. So let me change gears here. So there's the rest of us who are sitting there that say, well, meditation isn't necessarily an easy thing for me. I could say, having sat here with the two of you, and I'm just taking a guess here. I'm taking a swing. Don't. I'm going to use a funny term here. Don't crucify me for this.
Whoa.
Yeah, I know. But to me, just looking at the two of you, and this is just my intuition here, it was probably easier for Carla to get into it than Dr. Dave. Am I right? No?
Absolutely wrong.
Totally wrong. He can shut it off, go to a past life like this.
Huh.
The first time I meditated, I was gone in 3 minutes.
Really?
And I've regressed Dave over and over. I can do it like this with him. With me, first of all, anybody can meditate. You need to make the time religiously, just like anything else. You make your bed, you take a shower, you brush your teeth daily, 20 to 30 minutes. You have to train yourself.
I can't do it.
You can, because I was able to. And when I was younger, if the diagnosis was available, they would have called me ADD.
Exactly.
But it wasn't there when I was a child. It takes me time. I first start thinking, did I turn off the iron? Did I shut off the oven? What am I going to make for dinner? And then you keep breathing. You recognize your breath.
Mm-hmm.
You take notice of it. you imagine a nice, warm, bright light entering the top of your head, trickling to each part of your body, going all the way down. And when a thought comes in, you either imagine a flame trickling until the thought goes away, or you count 1, 2, 1, 2. You can do it. You need to be trained, and don't have a whole bunch of caffeine, for God's sakes, or it's not going to help you.
So, Tim, the other thing, people are always saying that they can't, and so far everybody can meditate that we've ever met.
Yep.
But I got to also tell you part of this. The reality is that every single day of your life, you go into a meditative state.
Are you talking about sleep? Because that's what happens when I try to meditate.
It's partially sleep is that spot right in between sleep and that. It's a meditative state.
Okay.
But everybody can do this. In fact, everybody does this. You know, I don't know where you do your podcast or, you know, but like for me, every day I get in a car. Now it's 3 days a week because I'm partially retired, and I drive to work. I get in the car and I hit the button and I back out and I drive down the road and I turn in and I realize I drove 20 minutes and I'm at work and I don't remember any of it. Because you are so hyper aware that you're driving automatically because you're meditating.
Or the kids call it zoning out, but yeah.
Yes, exactly.
But that happens to everyone. Everyone can do that. Or you watch TV and you realize you don't remember watching the TV, but you didn't fall asleep.
Or you talk on the phone and you eat a bag of M&Ms and they're gone and you didn't even taste one.
But I'm also not having past life experiences when I do that either.
How do you know?
Because I've never had a past life experience while doing that.
Have you had deja vu?
I have a few times, yeah.
Have you met anybody that you felt extremely close to right off, or somebody that you felt fearful of or didn't like right off the bat?
Yes. Yep.
Of course. That's all past life experience.
And the other thing, Tim, is probably if you did have a past life regression, they'd be able to hypnotize you. And really, meditation is the easiest form to say is sort of self-hypnosis. It's really a matter of how do you shut this off long enough that you quit thinking about everything that's happening. And it's really, how do you distract your brain from wandering?
That's the issue, is getting it to stop from wandering, because there is so much going on in a day that it's, and this is what it is. And I can only speak for myself, nobody else. And I'll tell you exactly what happens with me, and then the two of you can weigh in. And that is, I'll sit there, I'll do the countdown, or like you said, Carla, and I've even gone to the point where sometimes they tell you to see something on a screen. I know that's when you want to project or when you want to.
Right.
Okay. You get to that point, and even if you're taking the elevator down to do the self-hypnosis to see the buttons on the elevator, or however it is you want to go down and do the self-hypnosis and get into the hypnotic state and try to feel things get heavy or whatever, and whatever version of self-hypnosis you want to use, it either knocks me out like a light, like the deepest sleep you've ever had, or I have these thoughts that start wandering and they make no sense.
What time of the day do you meditate?
I've meditated in the morning. I've meditated in the afternoon. I've done it late at night.
I would try, first of all, doing it without expectation in the morning after you've rested. If you're expecting something, that's not why you should meditate. You should meditate to get away from our phones and the computer and the TV and to shut your mind off, because how can the spiritual world reach you if your mind is busy?
And the other thing is, Tim, I would suggest that if you meditate and you fall asleep, you need the sleep.
Well, Dr. Dave, and I know you can appreciate this, and you can too. I'm not saying that, Carla, but you're talking to a guy who's got a ton of health problems and is on multiple meds, so falling asleep is not tough for me. It's pretty much drug induced. So it's pretty easy for me if fatigue is pretty, it's steady. Fatigue is steady for me. So I fight through fatigue to get through my day.
So when you meditate, are you sitting up?
Yeah.
Okay.
Are you sitting like in a straight back chair?
Either that or a couch.
Okay, I would recommend sitting in a straight back chair because, of course, we're going to go to sleep if we get too comfortable. Mm-hmm. And your feet should be flat on the floor. You should be sitting up so that you're not so comfortable that you will fall asleep. But I'm telling you, you can do it. It just takes practice. If I can do it, anybody can do it.
Okay.
And Tim, after 30 or 40 minutes of meditating, I will fall asleep if I stay there long enough. You can't do nothing for that long if you're a busy person.
Well, what's the right amount of time to meditate? Is it 10 minutes, 15 minutes? If
that's all you can muster up, but are you doing it with or without music?
Oh, without. I can't concentrate with. If there's something else going on in the background, I can't concentrate. If I'm reading, like, let's say I'm prepping for an interview, if I'm reading somebody's book, I turn all distractions off.
Okay, so you just said the opposite of what you're supposed to do. We want the distraction. So if you put on music, like spa music,
not words that you can
can sing or hum.
Okay.
The music will distract you from your regular mind. Try it that way. And and I shouldn't plug her, but she's good, Constance Dempsey. She has a lot of CDs out there with this music that just takes you somewhere else. Really good.
Okay. All right. Yeah. Normally, I shut everything off so that I can concentrate on what I'm doing.
Because then you can hear every little thing. That's why I use music, because I hear everything and I'm distracted easily.
Yeah. So, Tim, though, to answer your question in a slightly medical research basis, they literally say it's about 80% of the population can be hypnotized.
Okay.
So probably the depth of meditation that you get, if you're in that other 20%, it's difficult. Now, what we found is when we've taught people how to meditate and they've done it often enough, even those people that don't seem to be able to be hypnotized, that number starts to go up. So those people that really have a difficult time shutting off their mind, if they work on meditating long enough, then you can do a past life regression and do some hypnosis, and they'll get there easier because they're sort of training their brain to do it.
But do it without expectation. Don't concentrate on a staircase. Don't do any of those things. Just blank the mind out. Counting sheep that really did work.
Really?
Yeah.
So try those things because you probably can be more successful. There's a lot of past life regression tapes, and some people can listen to a tape and they get a past life memory like this.
YouTube has a lot of videos. Dr. Brian Weiss has a YouTube or a disc, that you can do for meditation.
Yeah, and so we actually wrote the first 2 books, and then we wanted to find people who had experiences like us. So we went and trained with Dr. Brian Weiss, and it was a wonderful experience. And it was fantastic because there were 500 or 150
people from all over the world. The United States is way behind on their beliefs in reincarnation. Some of these countries, Chile, they sent social workers over to learn past life regression to use on patients that were at the end of their lives to help them through it.
Through the past life,
we're
end of life situations. Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Well, tell me a little bit about that. Okay, so you're talking to people who are at the end of life about reincarnation. Is that to help bring down the level of anxiety about end of life? Is that exactly what that's all about?
Yes, and to take them through it without their fear. So many people linger in death and pain because they have so much fear because of religion telling them, you're going to go before so and so and you'll either go to heaven or hell. No, that is not what's going to happen. You will die, you'll go to plane 2. You'll be greeted by people that love you, and then you will go to your life review. And in your life review, you'll have a council of people that you had other lives with. And they will say to you, Tim, do you think it was wise when you did this? No, you could have done better than that. They don't say, Tim, you're going to hell. You shouldn't have done that. What kind of boy were you? It's not like that. It's a very loving experience.
They're not going to say, Tim, you stole someone's pencil when you were 10 years old. You're going to hell.
Yeah, it doesn't work that way.
It doesn't work that way. And Tim, what I think is also interesting is the more research we do on reincarnation, the more we do on near-death experiences, the more we do on spontaneous memories in children, all of these people are reporting the same thing. They report beings of light, an overwhelming sense of love on the other side, meeting their family that has passed before them, planning some sort of trip for the next time. All of those are very consistent memories, no matter how they get there, whether it's a near-death experience. And what do those people with near-death experiences tell you? 98% report they didn't want to leave back because the experience is beautiful, loving, all-encompassing, and with no needs.
So I got to play devil's advocate here. What are the other 2% saying or seeing? What are they? If there's no hell, what are the other 2% seeing?
That's easy.
It's really easy.
If you're imagining things like you're being burned,
yes, or the voices,
maybe,
yeah.
Of course, maybe you had a past life where you were burned, and you're pulling those experiences, and you pull from what you know. If you were taught your whole life you were going to be burned in the fires of hell, of course that's what you were going to imagine, because the mind is capable of a lot of things.
And we can't report what we don't know. That's the point of having all these experiences. So if your belief is so strong that you're going to meet Satan because you were a bad person, and you've already imagined this, you've seen the pictures on TV of some burning thing, and you get there and you're dying and you're heading up there, and you come back and you say, oh, it was horrible because I went to hell. But a very small percent report that.
That's true. Yeah. That is true. Well, we've covered a lot of ground today with what we've done, and by all means, we could have the two of you back, and we could cover even more ground. I think today's a good cover, a good base of what we've done. And there's 4 books out there, folks. The Gift of Past Lives with Mother Isabella, God, and Elizabeth. Open the book. The beauty is inside. There is no hell. We Never Got the Manual, which is the 3rd book, and this is a love story. It's her.
The last one is Her Huba and His Rose.
That's right.
Which is a love story.
Yep. This is a love story. Yeah. Her Huba and His Rose is the 4th one. All 4 of them are available at thegiftofpastlives.com. We've got a link in the description of this program. You can click on that link and get all 4 of those books.
And if people would like to reach us, there's a contact us on that website too, so they can send us messages and we'll respond.
And you certainly can order them from Amazon or Barnes & Noble. But remember the little guy too. The little bookstores can order them just as well.
That's right. I want to thank you both, Dr. Dave, Carla. I want to thank you both for joining us. And I'm going to throw one last question at you here. If you had your druthers in the next life, because I know we've heard about some past lives, your current life, if you have your druthers and you had to come back in a future life, how would the two of you come back in relation to each other? We'll start with Dr. Dave.
I would want to meet Carla when I was 3 on a beach in Boston. And I would like my folks to not move from Boston, and that I spend every moment from the time I was 3 till the day I died with her.
Oh, okay. Carla?
Well, our favorite life is in England in
16s to the 1650 about.
My name is Sarah. His name is Robert. We have a very simple life. We love each other. It is not without adversity. We lose a child. We have one child. It's a hard life, but we were very, very happy. So I would like a life like that all over again.
That's how it would be if I had met you and kept with you from 3 till
That's
now.
right. That's right.
There you go. See, well, it sounds like you have the same goal in mind. So there you go. I mean, it's okay. I lied. I got a second question here. You had mentioned soulmates earlier in the program. Do you prescribe yourselves to be? You hear the term twin flames all the time, and a lot of people say that's my twin flame. That's my twin flame. And those people may be a little. I don't want to use the word diluted, but they might be throwing out the wrong term for what they think they feel for each other. Do you two truly believe that you are twin flames?
No.
Explain a twin flame.
Okay, so twin flame and soulmates, the way I'll use Dolores Cannon because she's one who made this very popular, but this really starts back from a story written by Plato in 500 BC.
Okay.
That was meant to teach people why love is important and why people are searching for the one who makes them feel good. So in that case, what Plato said is that man started as a two-headed, four-armed, four-legged beast that was split in half and placed on the opposite ends of the earth so that they would search their whole life to complete themselves. That's what Plato wrote.
Okay.
That has been popularized as a twin flame. And what they claim is that a twin flame is really one soul that's split in half and it's not always together. Sometimes they're not even in lives together. But because you're missing that other one, that you're searching, and it may be that you search so much that it's even an unhealthy search, which is what some twin flames turn out to be, an unhealthy relationship. And they compare that and contrast it with soulmates that are supposed to meet. And I'm going to say we're all in the same soul families. We have smaller soul families. We're always meant to meet. There are those that you care about. And the people you love, you should love the way you love them for just the person they are. Because if you love something for something you want them to be, you're not loving them.
And each soul is made complete in itself. We come into this world on our own. We go out on our own. We are totally responsible for our own actions. Nobody completes us.
It's a good place to end. That's perfect. That's perfect. All right, Dr. Dave Carla, I want to thank you very much for joining us today. And I want to add a quick point here as we leave you this week. I know this week has been a tumultuous week, and especially with the events that happened over in Uvalde, Texas. Folks, although we send out thoughts and prayers, of course, to the families that were affected this week, we also have to stop thinking about just thoughts and prayers. We have to add some action to that. We have to start thinking about our children as more than just objects, as just things that we send to school every day. We have to start protecting them like we protect our money, like we protect our valuable objects, like we protect the things that we have at Area 51. We have to start protecting our children like we say we would. A lot of times we say we protect our children with our lives. Well, we need to start doing that. We need to do something that we haven't done in a long time. Our society is, for some reason, become unraveled. You don't want to get to know your neighbors anymore, and your neighbors don't want to get to know your kids. We tend to be insular. We tend to hide in our homes. We don't tend to want to look out for one another. But now's the time where we need to look after each other. And a lot of times at the end of this program, I say, take care of yourself and each other. And I mean that. Take care of yourself. Take care of your kids. Take care of other people's kids. When you see something, say something. If something's going wrong with a neighbor's kid, something's going wrong with somebody else's kid, tell that kid's parent. Get together. Share information with each other. Stem the problem off before a problem becomes a problem. That's what we need to do in today's society. A lot of times, that's how you quell things in society, is by bringing up a problem and talking about it. It's a little too late for thoughts and prayers now, folks. It just is. It's time now where we need to come up with some sort of action. I'm not going to tell you what action needs to be done. That's not this type of program. I'm just going to tell you this. We need to do something now, because we can't keep watching kids die. That'll do it for this weekend. Memorial Day weekend is this weekend. Remember what Memorial Day is all about. Celebrate appropriately. We'll see you on Tuesday for True Crime Tuesday. I'm Tim Dennis, and this has been Darkness Radio.